previously on Stay in Your Lane.
but does not correspond at all with the reefer download.
Correct. Now, if that unit, if that product was loaded at 45 or 46 or 50 degrees, that return air
Yeah,
temp,
you would have had a huge heat sink in the trailer. As you said, the first few hours would be
it would be
the
climbing.
return air would be high.
Yeah, well, it normally climbs
Or
and then it builds. And that's the visibility on the download, which there is none. We get to the receiver at 6 a.m., back into the doors, you open our doors back into the dock, and we hear nothing on a temperature question for 2 hours and 45 minutes. In that 2 hours and 45 minutes, that product's been taken off of the trailer at some point in time. The recorder was analyzed, and then the product was all put back on the trailer after that, and the load was refused. Destructive temp. When you're delivering a product that is liquid, that doesn't have any fat in it, or that doesn't have any mass to it, it's going to warm up much quicker and cool much quicker than something that is thick or has, fat enzymes or fat and more substance to it. That is the norm, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
density
yeah.
would affect that.
Density affects it. Yes. So if this product sat on the warm dock for 2 hours and 45 minutes with the unit, pulling in warm air into the trailer, could the temperature have warmed up on the dock from 34 or 33 degrees to 45, 46?
45?
Yep. In 3 hours, could it go up 10 degrees on the top case?
I don't know.
Uh, I'm gonna say no. It would increase some, but 10 degrees? Not on a refrigerated dock. A refrigerated dock should be 40 degrees or less.
Should be.
So even then, to have it temp out at 45 with destructive temps, that doesn't make sense either.
So what we're trying to do is understand, where did the product get warm, or do we have a bad temp tail?
But John, that's the issue. You have conflicting pieces of data. You've got a temp tail with the graph that shows, you know, 40 40 to 45 degrees for the duration. You've got a destructive temp that matches that, but then you also have the reefer download that conflicts and shows that it ran perfectly.
Correct. For me to understand this, I would want more information. For me to say definitively, where did the product get warm, I would ask that the product be broken down, or a pallet be broken down, and get an interior temp of a pallet and an exterior temp of the pallet, right? So if it's on the top of the pallet and you get a temperature of the top case on the top of the pallet, that would warm up more than the interior cases. And then you would know if it happened recently, or if it's warmer inside versus cooler on the exterior of the pallet.
Also, John, where was the temp tail?
I believe this one was 4 feet back,
From
and
the
that
doors?
4 feet back from the nose.
There's just one temp tail on this load?
Correct. But my contention is the temp tail was never accurate at any point in time. We know that the temperature on the dock of shipping was 38 degrees. That's recorded and shared with us. We know that the product was manufactured 2 weeks earlier and sat in the warehouse, refrigerated. So we can't definitively say that we were loaded with warm product, because the download does not show us that it was loaded with warm product. Now, I've hauled other items that are dense. This is not dense, this is liquid. Cookie dough, for example. I've hauled cookie dough that was bagged and boxed in 25-pound boxes. Okay, so for food service. And the outside, the shipper came to me with a temperature problem, saying, "We can't deliver a load in at temp. We need your help. John, would you help us figure out what's going on in this lane?" I said, "Sure. Here's what I need to do. I actually need to do one shipment without liability on the product, so I can understand what's going on. So I went to the shipper, but they had 6 shipments refused to temp before they came to me. I actually was in Southern California, and I pre-cooled, had my driver pre-cool, and I put a team on it so that we didn't have it on the trailer, more than 2 days. It was going all the way across the country. New equipment, etc. Pre-cooled to -10, went into the shipper, loaded it. They gunned the product with their infrared gun, and the cellophane in the boxes, etc., on the exterior were all at -15, -18 degrees on the outside of the boxes. They put the load in the trailer, sealed it, closed the doors, put the seal on. We released the driver, sent him on his way. So he's going all the way to Georgia with this shipment years ago. And 2 hours into the trip, he said, my refrigeration unit has been on high speed the whole time. It's not come off high speed one time. I said, well, keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on your box temp and let me know what's going on in 6 hours. So we watched it and charted temp all the way across. We went to the receiver, opened the doors. The product was pulped, refused. All the pallets were marked, and it was put back on the trailer. Load is refused due to temp. They were pulping the product in the trailer. They were pulping the product inside the box, and it was warm. So I went back to the shipper and said, okay, when was it made and how long was it in a blast freezer? Well, it turns out they did not have it in the blast freezer long enough for it to really lower the core temp.
So you had to heat sink the entire load.
We had to heat sink the entire load. The reefer unit never came off of high speed. We got to the receiver only to be refused. So the unit was actually continually blowing -10 into the trailer, other than the normal defrost cycles. It was blowing as cold as possible in the trailer the whole trip and running its butt off, and the product was still refused. So I went to the shipper, explained the situation to him. I said, do this. Put the product in the blast freezer, pull the pallet out after the amount of time, 1 day, 2 days, that this was in your blast freezer. Pull it out, break down the product, break down to the middle of the pallet, open up a box, and pulp it. And believe it or not, it was still warm. Similar temp to what we delivered at. So they changed their policy and actually kept it in the blast freezer long enough to get the core temps down. And then we loaded another shipment and teamed it across the country, watching temp, the whole 9 yards, to be received with no issues. But in that scenario, the return air warmed up after leaving the shipper and the doors were closed and sealed. It was obvious on the temp tail that the product was warm and was emitting heat into the trailer. And the units are made to maintain temp more than become a freezer or freeze and blast freeze cold product, etc. They're made to maintain temp. So that solved that issue on delivering product at temp and getting it received at temp. But through the years, I've dealt with multiple of them, and this one confuses me.
But you also have instructed that the product was at 45 or 46 degrees.
Right, but only one case was checked, and it was 3 hours later, and we had to wait for that to come on the back end. Our next guests will be QA people that we're going to be bringing into this scenario for quality assurance and quality control from some outside parties. Our downloads are from outside parties and third parties, so they're not involved in the scenario or any of the details. But we're gonna bring some quality control and quality assurance professionals in to get their perspective, because I see it from a transportation perspective. Joe, what are your thoughts?
I think this goes back to a more basic elemental question: the responsibilities of each party, the shipper, the carrier, the receiver.
Okay.
what information is just take through all the process. You tender a load. When you tender that load, you should be telling the carrier, A, I need it in this temperature range, etc. When it gets there, when the trailer gets to the facility, are you checking the reefer unit? Are you checking the the exterior interior check, make sure the insulation is all right? Any problems? Are you loading it timely? Or when it's being loaded, is the reefer continuously running? Or do you shut it off when the door's open? I mean, the way I look at it, you've got three parties, and you need to make sure that everyone's doing what they should be doing. I mean, if you're going to put a trailer in a door and then not load the product for 4 hours, I mean, that's a problem. When you get to a receiver, they open the doors and it sits for a couple hours. I mean, you're just asking for trouble. I mean, this is a sensitive product, and it needs to be handled with a sensitivity. My contention is that on the shipper and receiver side, a lot of the people there don't understand how a reefer unit works, what a reefer unit's supposed to do. Like you said, it maintains. It doesn't lower temperature. It's supposed to maintain the temperature when you close the doors. When you set it at 35, it's supposed to maintain at 35, within a couple of degrees. So my contention is that there's a huge educational opportunity here for shippers and receivers. A, what does a reefer do? And B, how you should handle this product. I mean, I think it's a lot of mishandling is done. And again, I look at a carrier with these new reefer units, with all these telematics. They can tell you exactly what the temperature is. And so again, I tend to think that we got to look on the receiving and the shipping end. That's, to me, where most of the challenges, most of the problems are.
Absolutely correct on all counts. Nathan.
So the timing, when it was backed into the doors are open, the reefer unit was on, temperature outside. And because I'm looking at the return air from what I remember, the return air looked to be still well within parameters.
Correct.
While it was but I'm just curious what the outside temperature was, because if it's, to your point, it's sucking in the ambient air from outside, is it warming up that back pallet? And the back pallet is the one that is warm, that they pulp temp. So there could be that issue there, but that still doesn't alleviate the, unless the temp tail or temperature monitor was faulty. If the receiver's dock is 40 degrees, then there's no way for the product to get to 45 degrees. I mean, it can't go higher than the dock temperature unless it was warmed up sitting at the back end of the truck. So yeah, you're sucking in 70, 80 degree temps for a couple of hours. That's very possible that back pallet got warm. That's one of the things that we stress with, and it's in contracts that we run at 34 continuous. And we've had a couple carriers that picked it up. It was low at continuous, and then it got switched to cycle tree later on. And we have some very fastidious customers that, check the first and only thing they check. They do multiple temps on the back two pallets, and if it's over 40 degrees, it's out. It's rejected.
Oh, absolutely.
Continue watching on the next episode of the Stay in Your Lane podcast.